from Team Girls Buzz, and I also have Likita from Team Girls Buzz as well. So, a little bit about Girls Buzz. So, we are an all encompassing knowledge platform for women to learn from their peers. We also help them to get inspired from women champions who have made a mark in their respective fields and learn from experts we bring onto the platform on various topics. For example, today we have expert Shilpa Bhardwaj with us, and the topic for today is representation of women in STEM field and research. So a little bit about Shilpa Bhardwaj as well. So Shilpa Bhardwaj is an architect by profession and has been currently transferred to Texas A&M University to pursue her PhD in healthcare design. She works closely with on remote in remodeling the existing emergency rooms and ICUs for the betterment of healthcare infrastructure. And that's not all. She has an excellent academic record and has been awarded the Graduate Scholarship Award thrice in a row from the University of Cincinnati. And she's currently working with Dr. Gabriela Camnall as a graduate assistant. And apart from that, she's a classical musician too and is undergoing advanced training under with Nisha Rajgopal. So we would request our expert today, Shilpa Bhardwaj, to take over the session.
Thank you so much for this introduction. So I'm in Dallas right now, and so basically all our Wi-Fi is low throughout the city. So what's right if something's not wrong? So I'm going to share my screen, and I will also try, and is it okay if I also turn off my video in some parts because I don't want the Wi-Fi to fluctuate?
Sure, as according to your convenience. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. I'm an architect by profession, and it's a privilege to be associated with Girl Buzz for this webinar. But before moving forward, I want to put out a disclaimer about myself. This is something I've got from my professor. I'm an anti-racist, a feminist, an urbanist, and I strongly endorse, advocate, and follow diversity, equality, inclusion, and representation of all humankinds in the fields that contribute to good within our society. Now, since that is out of our way, this is an image that has impacted me in many ways. This is a picture that was taken in the year 1927 at the Solvay Conference, and this particular conference is devoted to outstanding preeminent open problems in both physics and chemistry. And this was a much celebrated photograph, and even till date, there is just one thing that is always spoken about. And this is something really disturbing because throughout this picture, there's only one lady, and that's Madame Curie. But this is not as disturbing as the next picture that I'm going to put up. And this was the 25th meeting of the same conference. So this is more recent, you know. There has been developments in the world. There have been 3 phases of feminism. There has been education that is catered to a larger population. We have had women's suffrage movement. We have had wars and whatnot. So things should have changed, at least that is our expectation. But yet the women population, I think there are only 2 women in the entire thing. Now this is disturbing, it is painful. It's not painful because there has been a lack of change. It's actually painful because it's very confusing. So what is actually happening? Where are the women? Are women not being retained in science? Are women not attracted to science? Are we just not having a good sex ratio? So I'm going to answer each of these questions one by one. Are women not being retained in science? So that is yes. We are not having women retained in science. And second, are women not attracted to science? Well, this is pretty debatable because today half of all the MD degrees in the world are awarded to women. 52% of PhDs are awarded to life sciences are also again women. 57 PhDs in social science are again awarded to women. 71% are psychologists. 77% of the veterinarians in the globe are again women. But still, the representation of women in professional science group is less than 10%. Now, there are a couple of reasons. And most of the reasons that we're going to discuss today are more often than not very ridiculous. So these are researches that have been, spoken about in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences USA. And this was done in the year 2015. And it was edited and again published by University of Southern California in 2017. So this research has been taking place throughout the globe. That means they've had subjects from throughout the globe. So substantial research shows that resumes and journal articles were rated lower by male and female reviewers once they were told that the author was women. Similarly, a study of postdoctoral fellowships awarded showed that female awardees needed subsequently more publications to achieve the same competency rating as a male awardee. So now, when I look at the biases that happen in the field of science, it functions at many levels. So this includes allocation, employment, payment, publication, and general research directions. So now research has pointed out to a bias even in a peer reviewing and higher category. So by peer review, I mean that if I'm a PhD student, I will be reviewing publications from other PhD students to probably publish in my university press or in a home press. So a woman needs to publish at least 3 more papers in a prestigious science journal or an additional of 20 papers in lesser known specialty journals to be judged as productive as a male applicant. So now in the field of architecture, because I've been working here, I know that one paper requires at least 6 months from being reviewed to being published. So now when a person has to publish at least 20 more papers, the speed of a person's recognition is already halted compared to a man. And this is already slowing down the process of women into the field of science. So the systematic underrating of female applicants probably explains the lower success rate of female scientists in achieving higher academic ranks. So now there was an impressive controlled experimental research conducted by PNAS, and it shows that on the average, people are less likely to either hire or cater a woman compared to a man with identical qualification, and we are less likely to cite the publication of women compared to a man for identical accomplishments. So as I mentioned earlier, this seems very ridiculous. The idea that we're talking about this in times of 2021, in the 21st century, is pretty not acceptable. So now these reasons not only give an explanation to what is the plight of women in STEM, but it also gives rise to a syndrome that I would call the leaking bucket. So when I say the leaking bucket, it essentially means that, yes, we are attracting women to STEM, but what is happening is that we're losing as many or as much of women that we are attracting. So there is no use of attracting anything or anybody into the leaking bucket, because as women, we're not going to be contributing if we're just being lost in the field. So what is actually the problem? Like, what is happening? Why is the leaking bucket being caused? So to answer this, I want to define one thing. What is research? So in simple words, it means to identify a problem and investigate and find solutions to the same. So here the key word becomes a problem. So a problem is always human inclusive. There is no problem in the world, even if you talk about climate change, extraterrestrial research, no problem is human exclusive, because everything either is impacted by humans, or as humans, we impact the research. So a problem can be two things. It can either be gender inclusive or it can be gender exclusive. So this still means that there is more than one gender. We're not talking about a single gender. The idea that we're catering to more gender already makes it a gender inclusive research. But more often than not, there is not many female researchers, and there is lesser identification of a female-based question or a problem, and in turn, it is always one gender that is being excluded. And that's always the female gender. Because there are no female researchers, we're not talking about female problems. And this does not have to do with medical problems or anything. Anything that deals with the feminine aspect of a problem is not being discussed in the world. So whether you're studying a seat belt or a heart medication, your research should consider gender and include both female and male researchers, not only female and male subjects. So the world of science has to accept the fact that women are not scaled down men, so we are not a byproduct of men, we are not assisting men, so we are not scaled down men. So the idea that if a product has to be safe and efficient, effective, they have to be tested by and on both genders, and now also the idea of they have to be tested on all humankinds. So gender diversity adds to the collective intelligence of a research group, enhancing creativity, and it provides new context to understand social aspects of scientific research. So these are a few statistics that were again collected by my university, that is Texas A&M. So here you see that the biological sciences, about 47.7% are female representation. In chemists and material sciences, it's 42.5%. There is about 25.8% in computer and mathematical operations, and 15.7% of engineers and architects. So now what actually is happening is more than half of the circle is still male representation. There is not single female representation. So we might be in denial and we might say that, yes, all our problems are being catered to, but the truth is, if one of us is not being represented in more than half of the studies taken place globally, then 1 in 2 of our problems is not being catered to and will never be catered to globally. So as a feminist, I am not saying that we need to have lesser representation of men. As an urbanist, I insist, and I think a lot of researchers would insist, that we need to have equal representation if we want to use research to contribute to the good of the society. So, but where did this all start? Did this just start now? Did this start years ago? So this is the Vitruvian Man. And till date, this was created hundreds of years ago, and till date, architects still follow the construction standards according to this. So man and women are physiologically different, right? Where was the Vitruvian women? Every building that you're living in till today is designed according to the standards of a Vitruvian man. If you've gotten your house designed by an architect, it's more likely that it's not built according to your ergonomics. Every global construction that has happened, be it the Capitol State Building, be it any of the museum, the standards have actually come from the Vitruvian man. There is nothing ergonomically accommodating a Vitruvian woman, because long back, humans have also evolved in the way they have physiologically presented themselves. So did this start from here, or was it the scientific revolution? So scientific revolution is known as the Age of Enlightenment, where people stopped essentially believing in superstition and they started moving more towards science. So until then, right, women played a significant role in medieval healthcare, and even beyond, they kind of did. So this is primarily because healthcare was an act of providing sympathy and to nurture the ill. So, and both these characteristics were seen strongly associated with the female sex. And they said that a woman can provide sympathy, a woman can nurture and basically nurture and also look after. So in this sense, they associated this with women. Apart from this, it was long declared that women's health is women's business. In fact, the word gossip comes from the Greek word gospel, where it means that they were discussing about women care. So that's how it came, and now we've seen a Chinese whisper of the same language. So until then, there were only women midwives, but after the 17th and the 18th century, man midwives came into picture. And during those times, women were not admitted to medical schools, and many women went to practice medicine at home. But all of a sudden, churches, government authorities, men in power decided that anything that was not practiced by men was going to be called as witchcraft. And they went on a mission to execute women who practiced any medicine at home. So that's why the word witch hunt comes. So they actually went and killed every woman who was practicing medicine. Even till date, as science and as researchers, this is the first evidence of diminishing the representation of women in science. And that's the reason early medicine credit is mostly given to men, because no text was retained after that, because texts and women were executed at that time. So it is pretty clear that science and research started, the gender gap in science and research started pretty early. So if we dive into this more, there are typically three phases in a woman's life in research and STEM. One is the early life. This is where you can contemplate whether you want to join into the field of science, technology, engineering, maths, whether you want to dwell into research. And this is typically where, there is a lot of confidence gap that is created. So the next thing is midlife. This is typically the childbearing age where there are marital responsibilities. And here they either quit in the first 10 years or their ranks are significantly thinning. So this is between the age of 30 to 50, where most of the men are actually racing in the ranks of science and technology. And then you have the established careers. There are about 6% of CEOs in the globe that are represented by women. So you see a very small population, a very intimate group of women in the higher ranks. So how do we bridge this particular gender gap? So it is actually very surprising, because while I was studying, most of my teachers were women. I think that's true with a lot of Indian schools. We were taught science, science, math, social science, everything were taught by women. We had women teaching us all this, but when the application of the same came into the professional world, the subject suddenly became male dominated. We were suddenly serving to a field which was always dominated by men. So this is the latest statistics of the number of women representation. These are some of the top companies in the world. And you can see there is less than 30% of women employees everywhere. So there is not, so when you have less than 30%, you also have less than 30% of leaders of women employees. You have less than 30% of researchers catered to women. You have less than 30% of benefits catered to women. So everything that surrounds the life of a woman becomes thin as and when you have lesser representation in the field of science. Because like it or not, even if we're talking about society, politics, everything is driven by science at the present. So how can we stop this, right? Gender compartmentalizations towards career start at a very early stage in life. So young children are indoctrinated with certain genders being associated to certain professions. You may have a fabulous chef in the making, but he might be a young boy. You might have a math genius who might be a young girl. But by having certain genders associated, you're actually making more bad than good, because you're going to produce two frustrated individuals into the society who don't like what they're doing. And like it or not, science is not forgiving to women as it is forgiving to men. So when you go into an interview, when you go into the field of technology, you might notice an incompetent man is more acceptable than an incompetent woman. I'm not generalizing. I might come across as a complete man hater, but sometimes you need a woman needs to be more rebellious to be recognized as opposed to a man, that we've seen in history. So next thing would be to be an unbiased educator. So this is pretty much piggybanking on the previous topic. We need to make sure that we're very careful while educating people, or even while speaking to people. This, I don't mean just by being a teacher. I think it starts even at home, by kind of dividing attention between a boy and a woman when it comes to logic. Sometimes we do notice that girls are better at linguistics, they are more emotionally competent, and in such cases we do kind of give more attention to women as opposed to boys, and we do give more attention to boys when it comes to logic as opposed to women. So if math and science is the ultimate truth in life, then it should function in both brains equally. There shouldn't be any bias in the way it functions in either of us. Now, this is something, personally, it has affected me, having anonymous paper selection for journals. So as we kind of discussed earlier, I think paper submissions, paper reviews have to be done in an anonymous way, and it has to be done purely on merit. And we need to create a more gender inclusive selection, not only for today, but even for the future to come. If you look at any textbook that you have, maximum representation in the textbook, maximum citation is always men. So girls do not know whom to look up to. If you don't have enough women role models, you don't know whom to look up to. And that's the reason why what has happened hundreds of years ago, what's happening 50 years ago, is still going to happen in the next 50 years. And if we don't change it now, things are not going to change. And we need to be accepting that this is the reality and this is how your next generation is going to be as well. Having an unbiased interview, especially on personal matters. I was, before I was admitted to Texas A&M, I was admitted to University of Clemson, where I was, we were talking about scholarships and funding. So the interview process for these things are very biased. They kind of create biases on whether you're married or not, whether you'll be able to give enough after the PhD. So I did have a professor tell me that, being married is a full-time job. Would you be able to do, would you be able to do research as well? I was talking to even my sister-in-law, and when she also told that the only question the PG interviewers asked her was whether, she was planning on marriage. Or so this is not just with us, it's also with a lot of people, where the glass ceiling is so tight that it's very hard to break, immaterial of how supportive a home that you have. When you go out in the field, you're already competing in the first step of the door. So now, the idea is you ask them about these personal matters just to know that, okay, you're going to do something about it. But there is very little that is done even after knowing about anything regarding your personal life. Say, for example, the gender pay gap. This is a real thing that happens. If you look at any pay gap between the genders in many of the universities, you do see more tenure track position given to men. Given to women as opposed to permanent tracks given to men. Many of the software industries, there is a gender pay gap. I'm not entirely sure about which are these industries, but there are many industries that I have known of that do treat their men and women separately. So this comes off of the personal matters. During this pandemic, I think this has reinforced the idea of creating a flexible workspace. This is just not for women, this is also for a man, because work life balance is equal for men and women. We need to treat them equally. We need to give enough power to a man, immaterial of where he is. So we need to secure both the lives so that a flexible and a safe workspace is created where gender is not issued or allocated to any particular job that is done either at home or in your workspace. So the last thing I would say is choose your people carefully. And this is for all the girls out there, you know. You have a group of friends who probably shame you on being a geek. You have a group of people who don't like what you do. I think you need to be able to choose your people very carefully. I think feminism is a luxurious topic for me because I've had the most wonderful men in my life, be it my father, who's one of the strongest influencers in my life, my husband now. I think we discuss the idea of having a right life partner if you want to proceed in your career is very important, because you need a life partner who is as passionate as about your career as about his career. The idea of discussing each other's career brings a lot of security in a relationship. Be it my father-in-law, who's also again very encouraging. There is one thing that, you know, you encourage someone, you need to encourage everyone. And I think this is something that we need to inculcate in Indian families, you know, and having the right women as well. So I'm an architect because my mother is an architect. I saw a role model in her. My sister-in-law is a doctor. My mother-in-law is very encouraging. She is, you know, the idea of discussing career with family is very important. And I think this is what is women empowerment. We need to learn to straighten a girl's crown and not speak about it. We need to be more forgiving to girls. We need to create more role models, having the right educators, having the right people to even speak about your mistake in your career, being forgiving, I think is going to create not only women in STEM, but women in every field. And more so, I would like to call myself a STEMinist because there is a lack of representation. Because there is a lack of representation, I don't get my benefits. I know people don't get their benefits. I know a lot of girls in the next coming generation don't get their benefits. Recently, we were reviewing applications for the PhDs. There were about 15 or 20 applications from India. There were 2 girls who were coming in. And a lot of them refused their scholarship just because they were either married or they were having a child. See, these are not things that you do with a man. The idea of having separate rules in gender in the 21st century is something that is unacceptable. And if you're going to continue this, there is nothing going to be in the future. So I would like to conclude with this, and I'm open to any questions.
So if anyone has any question, you can write in the chat box below, or if anyone wants to speak over the video, of course, you're free to do so. So till then, Shilpa, we would love to ask you, you know, who has been your greatest inspiration? We understand your mom is there. Any role model you follow, maybe you can share with us.
So I think that different phases of my life, I've had different people I look up to. But as I said, my family has been the greatest of support. I belonged to a very secure family, and now I just got married last year, and I've been very, very fortunate to belong to a very nice family where, you know, I think we can discuss careers with so much passion, and I think this is what that brings about. But recently, we do have a lot of women who are doing, you know, doing research in certain topics. My professor, Dr. Gabriela Campanhel, she's from Portuguese, and she's just come in, and she has some fabulous research, and the way she sees herself, the confidence in her really has really,
That's great.
and I should really appreciate what Girls Bus has done, because the creative liberty that you have taken to bring about an intimate group of women, I think is really, really credible. Not many people do it. So thank you so much for having me here. I can put down my email ID. So
Sure.
So I think we can reach out to you on Instagram as well at Shilpa Bhardwaj HS.
yes.
That's right. So anyone has any questions, then later on you can also email me at mahashweta@girls.buzz, or you can contact Shilpa directly. I think she'll be sharing her email ID as well.
Yeah, it's out there. Actually, my the idea of women empowerment came to me from my grandmother. This was long time ago, and she was I think she has made a life for herself that I couldn't imagine making it for me. She introduced me to classical music, and she's someone who is very, very passionate about what she does, even till date, like, and that passion is something that is so infectious. Having passionate women is something very infectious.
That's awesome. Shilpa, your story is super, inspiring, and it's lovely that you have a supportive family. But what can a woman do if, say, the people in her life are not supportive about her career choices, or certain situations in her life, be it like marrying or having a child, are stopping her from achieving her dreams? So, would you have any tips, or how should women like that go about it? Because the
So,
whole society, sorry to interrupt you, because the whole society is like, um it's based on patriarchy, everything in life, so how can women stand up for themselves?
well, I think the society has conditioned women to be very submissive. We kind of agree to things we don't find all right. So I think this should start when you're bringing up a girl child. You need to let her know that she's enough for herself. She needs to make the right choices for herself. But this is a societal conditioning, this has happened from ages together. You see someone doing something, you expect the same person to do something else, you expect the next generation to do. So we need to change the way the society thinks, but that is too large a thing for just one girl to do. But I would say that nobody can uh, nobody can harm you, and if someone tries to harm you for being passionate, you need to reach out there. You have social media right now, and I think that is the reason why I was so impressed with these small groups of women coming together, that they have to reach out and they have to say that I am passionate about this, but I'm not allowed to be passionate about this. So reaching out, vocalizing your thoughts, and teaching girls to be vocal about themselves is very important. And once they know that, I think there is no stopping. But it is a very tricky thing, if you don't have support system, it's very difficult to crack the nut, because it's already a difficult escalator to go through.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have some experience to share. So basically, I was working in Bosch last 30 and odd years. And in Bosch, there is a new move to be more inclusive with women in higher positions. Okay, so what they have tried to do is to fix a target that at least maybe in the next few years, the 5 to 10% of all managers should be women. So they have given this target to HR. And the HR's job is to first select women who fit the role and try to meet the targets. Now, in a corporate world, this kind of a thing is possible. I don't know how these things can be implemented in other areas of work, but definitely this kind of a method seems to be one good initiative to make women come out in the open and give more opportunities to women. And in the Indian situation, one very nice thing is that in politics, for example, our BJP government is wanting to have 33% of the legislators as women. This is some internal target which they have fixed for themselves. Even though it tends to breed a number game, but at least to in the beginning, if you have these kind of targets, it can lead to some improvements in the parameters what we are looking at. And another experience which I want to share is in Bosch again, to encourage women to come into research field. What they did was they made women who are already in the research areas, who are working in the labs and scientific projects. So they gave a open this one for them to share their experience in the in-house magazines. For example, we have an online magazine, and in this magazine, some of the articles were being given by these women who achieved something in their scientific fields. And for example, one of the person whose article which I read was talking about, how she was getting enthusiastic about science topics. She used to watch Star Wars movies and get, encouraged by the kind of events and the interstellar travels and things like this. And it made a very enterprising experience for her, and that made her get into these kind of topics. So the in-house magazine tried to bring out stories from live people who are around you. And this kind of probably would have encouraged other women also to get into these kind of projects and roles in real life. Okay, so I thought these two experiences are, quite significant, and maybe when you come to a situation where you are in a stage to encourage somebody, then you will be looking around for ideas of how to do this. Probably these two ideas can help you.
Yeah, I think
Definitely, I agree with you on this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Shailaja Srinath. I'm an architect. See, this is a experience which I'm sharing in a private sector. I think my daughter grew up looking at me. The corporate world has a certain privileges, I would say, for women. But for an architect, it is such an unorganized sector. Till today, even today, when I go to site, men refuse to take my concept at the first instant, like it could be a masonry, for example. I'm not talking about big contractors, big civil engineers, structural engineers. No, a contractor, a painter, they have a kind of a inhibition whether this person can do. For all these people, for all women who want to excel in their life, I would want to say one thing. There's no point in criticizing. You have to come up, you have to fight your own battle. And however, this is for Likita. You were asking a question, how if a family is not supporting, if your passion, if it is really great, nobody can beat you. The circumstances will succumb to your passion, not, you have to rise to the occasion. Nobody else can. That's what personally I thought. We have had immense struggle, and Shilpa would have seen that struggle in the field. So according to me, you have to fight your own battle. You have to come up in your life. And of course, parenting is a very, very big thing. which has to be, as she said, the gap and the concept of bringing up a girl child is very important. You know, it is a different this thing altogether, but you have to find your own path. This is what I personally feel, because every day I face challenges. Every second in my life, I face challenges in my industry. So this is one small thing I just wanted to tell you, can add up some substance to your present discussion. That's
There
it.
is a
Yeah, there was
question.
one.
It's, what, in your opinion, should our schools and colleges do to empower girls from an early age? I think the idea of including a gender inclusive faculty is very important throughout, you know, like where you don't associate any form of gender into one particular profession, have a gender inclusive and make more vocational sciences being a part of your education system. And I don't understand that even after 21 years we do not talk about the wars and the rules of women's suffrage movement, either feminist movements in our social sciences. We still talk about the same Mughal period and British history. Yeah, these are important things, but there have been other very significant movements in the world that have to still be spoken about. And when you teach young girls and young boys these things, it's going to make a huge impact in their life later on. I took a course last semester on feminism. It changed the way I believe in life. It changed the way my confidence level was in life. I think having an education system where you speak about values would really empower not just girls, even men. You need empowered men to empower women. It cannot work separately. You need to have a good man to have a good lady. You need, these things are interconnected in nature. And that is very, very important for our education system to kind of inculcate.
Sure, we agree with you. It was really great, even listening to the experiences. Of course, even I have got I have met people who have been suffering through all these instances. Then it's good that I can share with them about these experiences and what we can do, to encourage more women in STEM. So definitely, I'm sure that a lot of people, our audience has also learned a lot about this, and I'm sure they'll be inculcating all these tips which you have shared with us. So, so all we would like to say is thank you, Shilpa, for taking out your time and giving us this amazing opportunity to learn all these things, which people actually don't talk about, to be honest.
This was
So,
wonderful. And I hope that you girls continue doing this, because it's really putting light on things that have to be spoken about.
definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.